So here's how we're going to sew a 4-patch. I've already gone ahead and cut out 4 squares, 2 of one pattern and 2 of the other. And I have some extra for some later. So what I did is I already started to put the 2 together. So what you're going to do is you're going to take opposite patterns, and you're going to put them what we call right sides together. So if you notice on my fabric, like this side looks really nice, and then this side looks a lot lighter. This is what we call the wrong side of our pattern, and this is the right side of our pattern. This one, depending on your fabric or your design, it doesn't really have a wrong side or a right side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the darkest side, I think, and put it on top of my right side of my blue fabric. And what you're going to do is you're going to line up the edges and the corners. If you notice, actually this square is a little bit smaller than this one, but that's okay. But I want to make sure that these edges right up here line straight up evenly, okay? You can keep them like that, or if you want to make sure that they stay like that, you can use a pin to hold it in place so it doesn't. Just be careful when you're sewing not to poke yourself. And you're going to get yourself a needle, and you're going to get yourself a thread. And a lot of you guys don't know about the pulling your string like a bow and arrow. So you're going to pull the string straight from your arm like you're pulling back a bow and arrow all the way. Bring that string back to your shoulder, on your opposite shoulder, and then you can cut. That's about how long your string needs to be. And then you're going to thread your needle, and you're going to make sure that your ends match up. So you're going to make almost like a necklace. So if you notice, I have both my ends together here. Okay, or how to make a knot rather at the end of your needle. Okay, because you need a knot when you're sewing. So this is one way that I show a lot of my students is you're going to take from the end, so your needle, your string's all nice and even, your ends are equal, and what you're going to do is you're going to kind of pull it out, and you're going to make a candy cane hook, just like that, okay? Then you're going to take those ends, and you're going to cross them over, so you make kind of a loop. Does everybody see that? Now right here where those lines come together, those strings overlap, we're going to put our pointer finger on the inside of that loop, and we're going to have our thumb on the outside right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick it up and we're going to pinch it. So we're holding this loop right now. This end right here is we're going to kind of come around and go through that little loop right there. So very carefully we're going to do that. And we're going to pull it, and if you notice, I'm pulling it towards the end. So I'm not just pulling it straight, because otherwise I'm going to have a knot like way down here. And I want that knot to be as close as I can to the front. So there's my knot, okay? It's really small. And sometimes depending on your fabric, you might need to make a bigger knot. So if that's the case, you're going to do that again. You can just do your candy cane, pull it over to your loop. If you're doing it a second time to make an extra big loop, make sure that knot is right where those 2 lines cross over. Okay, so my knot's right there. Pointer finger on inside, thumb on the outside. We're going to pinch it. And we're going to grab that group of loop, pull it through in. And again, try and pull it very carefully so that when you pull your knot, it actually pulls right on top of that knot that you just made. So now, you may not be able to see it, but look, that knot's a lot bigger. Okay, so now you're ready to start sewing. So we have our 2 pieces pinned together. What we're going to do is a running stitch. We always start our sewing from the back, so you're always going to come up. So my needle's back here, and this is the top of my sewing. So back of my sewing is here. We're going to come as close as we can to the corner. We're going to pull the needle up through both. And I like to use my fingers to help guide them, and that's why your nails are helpful. You're going to pull that string all the way till you feel that tug, so you can see the knot got to the back. Okay, so a running stitch is just like a dotted line. And that's what we're doing. So we're going to be taking our needle and we're going to make a little line. You don't want to make your stitches big, okay? Because the bigger your stitches are, the more you're going to have gaps in your sewing. So keep your stitches close together and small if you can. So we're going to go down. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right back up. I'm not going to pull it all the way through. So if you can kind of see, I have my needle going in and out a couple times. I'm going to do that 1 or 2 more times. I'm going to use my nails to help kind of push it back and push it forward. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it all the way through. Now, if you pull too tight when you're sewing, look what happens. It gets kind of squishy, right? We don't want that. We do nice and flat. So make sure when you pull that, you kind of pull your fabric nice and flat. Don't get caught on your pin. So we're going to do that a couple times, keeping your stitches small and close together. Go back and forth a couple times. Be very slow when you're pulling, so you make sure your string doesn't tangle on itself. And you're going to do this all the way to the end, just on this one edge. Okay, and then when you get to the end, we started our sewing with a knot on the back, and we're going to end our sewing with a knot. So one way we do this is you're going to sew through the last stitch that you made. So I'm going to actually put my needle underneath that last stitch that I made and pull it until I have a little bit of a loop here in my string. So I'm not pulling it all the way through. Put my needle through that loop and pull my needle, and it should make a knot. Pull that knot right up against the fabric. Okay, so we have a knot here and a knot here. Once you've done that, then you can cut your string. You can take your pin off, and voila. You can open up and you can see. You know you've done a really nice job of sewing is if when you open it up and you kind of tug a little bit, you're not seeing any gaps in between in your sewing. If you do see big holes, then you're going to want to go back in and sew, maybe even sew in this direction now, filling in the holes of your dotted line so that you're really making your seam nice and neat. So here I have two squares put together. And now I'm going to put them together to make a 4 patch. So that means I'm going to take this, right sides, face them together. So you're going to line up, again, your seams, like that middle seam right here together, and your edges together. And you might want to pin them in place so that they don't move while you're sewing. And you'll do the same thing. You're just going to sew all the way across this whole edge here. Same kind of stitch, running stitch. Make sure you have a knot before you start your sewing. Sew up and down, up and down, up and down, all the way to the end, and make a knot at the end. And then, whoosh, there you go. There's your 4 patch. And that takes some time. If you want a real challenge, you can do the same thing with a 9 patch. So the only difference is that instead of 4 of these, I would put another group together that way. So I'd have another like square on the end of this. So you put 3 squares together, and then another 3 squares together, and another 3 squares together, and then you would sew them all together. So try it out. If you're really into sewing, this is a really good thing to do. And if you make a bunch of these squares, you can put them all together to make a quilt top. And that's only the first part of making a quilt, really. Quilts usually have 3 layers. They have the really nice fabric design on top. The quilt top is what we call, where you had your pattern, your 9 patch or your 4 patch. And then underneath that goes kind of a warmer layer. And then underneath that would be on the bottom part of your quilt. And then you sew all 3 of those layers together. So if you have a family member who knows how to make quilts in your family, now's the time to ask them how to do it and see if maybe you guys can work together on making a quilt together. All right, have fun. Good luck.